Hey guys, Joe East here again. I took a day off from numbers analysis to get some more data because I was seeing a lot of noise in the data come out of New York, strangely enough. One of my calculations, I don't think it was like 20 to 30% of all infections were coming out of New York City. And about half of all infections are actually out of New York State. So it looks like there was a bit of noise coming out of New York. So I wanted to get a couple more data points before I made my second prediction, which I'll show you guys what I did and how I did it. Those of you who are mathematical people can figure out pretty quick what I did. Often when you're doing numerical analysis, the simplest equations will get you really far into what you're doing instead of some of the more complicated stuff. When the epidemic's over with, then you can do your complicated diffusion equations, mathematical analysis to check what might happen in the future. But in the fire of war or in the fire of things happening, sometimes the simple linear equations y equals mx plus b is sometimes the best you can do. Should I say the most useful and quick way to get stuff estimated really quick. Instead of trying to spend hours, sometimes like I do in my younger days, trying to plug equations into various complicated formulas. But anyway, so let's take a look at the numbers here in my extrapolations and my predictions on what's going on here and some explanations on what I did. Show you guys how to do what I did. And you go out and do it yourself. Like I said, when the epidemic's over with, we can go out and plug them back into the more complicated diffusion equations. So, we have enough data right now probably to make some pretty good extrapolations on what's going on. If the New York data noise holds up, if it doesn't hold up, these numbers will be much smaller. Okay, but if the noise holds up, I just extrapolated from that for the total number of infections. The deaths appear to be pretty stable. According to the model I initially created. So we're going to just extrapolate those in the same method that I extrapolate the infections. So there's kind of like the curve, how it looks, where you have almost a bell curve, but with a longer tail on it for these diffusive processes. So I estimated the peak happening with 11,250 infections at March 24th, 2020. Roughly speaking, let's grab this as the peak. And then we're going to extrapolate to April 19th, 2020 as the effective end of the epidemic. In practical terms, way before that, you can actually start getting society back in order. And under whatever lockdown or preventive measures you're trying to do, probably a week before that, maybe more. But let's just call the end date 4/19/2020 based on some of the models coming out of China and other countries as to how long it lasts from the peak until when you can pretty much say we're in the weeds and we're done. So you take that and you build yourself a linear line, y equals mx plus b, integrate underneath the curve. And then, like I said, you could run this yourself. So we already have data from here on back. So I got the data up there. My extrapolation was mainly a linear extrapolation. If you look at the line here, it cuts across the tail a bit. But whenever you add up this error and that, it's probably going to be pretty close to this. So my total infections projections based on that is 195,000. Again, the New York data pushed those numbers pretty high for some unknown reason. We need to figure out what's going on in New York. However, the deaths, I use the same methodologies. I'm going to project at 3,800 based on the numbers we know now. Again, if trends hold, I mean, we can always throw a factor of 1.5 in here or whatever. But that's kind of like what we're looking at, about 3,800. If the present trends hold, again, we got to watch those New York numbers and see what's going on there. There's something weird happening in New York. Okay, so that's the model. These are my my updated predictions. You can check my previous video on my initial predictions, and then we'll keep on doing this as sometimes the trends might change. We'll just update these guys. These are my predictions as of today. I want to point you data knots out. One thing I discovered today by accident, which is what we're going to cover on the right side of this whiteboard here. So I want to open up the consideration that this might have been a biological weapon that either accidentally or deliberately got outside of control of a laboratory, probably. Not sure exactly what this means, and we all must remember as scientists, correlation is not causation, but correlation indicates a possible causation, possible, and you have to investigate further to see if the causation link is indeed valid. But statistics typically can't give you causation. You have to use your scientific judgment and other models aside from these sort of statistical models of correlation to figure out there's really causation. A lot of it's judgment. It's not going to be like a straightforward formula. But anyway, given that, correlation, not causation, we're not quite sure if this is a biological weapon and what would, how this would get out of a laboratory deliberately or accidentally. So I did correlations on USA state ethnic percentages. So I got every state in the union and I grabbed the ethnic percentages. I grabbed 5 ethnic groups for the USA, every state. And then I correlated that against coronavirus deaths. And I saw something quite strange here. I want to point out to you data knots and you researchers that might be able to take this further. And if I get time and interest, and I think it's worth it, I might take this further, deep diving better into the data or come up with another model that might bring us close to either a causation or something else, right? So when you get the correlations for Asians, and I put that in percentages so non-mathematical people won't get confused by the correlation coefficients, but those of you specialists, I just basically did the correlation coefficients times 100 for the percentage here. So a 49% correlation for Asians from these spreadsheet correlations. That's an interesting number for me, and probably to those of you who do stats. I think we need to look very close into why the Asians are highly correlated with the corona deaths, whereas the next group, Hispanics, is correlated only at 20%, according to my calculations, my correlation calculations. And African Americans come in at 3%. Again, this is minuscule. Probably you can say that's not correlated in any significant way, but we're approaching a good correlation here, and this correlation jumps out pretty strongly. All right, American Indian is a negative correlation of negative 7%. So it appears that if this was a bioweapon, there was probably some design for certain ethnic groups in here. It's very strange, kind of weird, but I'm pointing it out because I found it. And then for whites, there's a negative correlation, which is pretty insane, negative 18%. So that's what I found. Not sure what the hell this really means, but I think it suggests some sort of biological experiment on molecules and how they affect the different ethnicities, and possibly a biological weapon designed to target perhaps Asians and perhaps protect those who are closer on the bottom of the curve. Pretty wild shit I discovered here. So again, like I said, correlation does not prove causation. I want you guys to know that. This doesn't prove it. It just indicates. It tells data scientists, hey, let's look a little bit deeper in here, see what the hell's going on there. Why are these numbers like this? Is there some other explanation, or is this something pretty crazy going on? So I want to make sure I pointed that out. And so that's where we are today, guys. I don't have much else to say other than as the situation is developing, it's still not even as bad as some of the authorities were predicting, because the death rate is very low, and in fact it's not even as dangerous as the flu virus, not even half as dangerous as the flu virus, according to where the statistics are going. The infection rate, again, like I said, there's a lot of noise in these numbers, but there's not much noise in the death numbers. So as we're standing today, the data indicates this is not a serious phenomenon for national emergencies or any sort of emergencies on the national level. So like I said, things can change, but at this point, there's no reason to indicate this is any sort of emergency or it ever was an emergency. But anyway, I pointed out some odd stuff to you guys, updated my predictions, kind of told you how I did the models here. You guys can copy and paste this and make your own model. See how close it is to mine. So have fun out there. Be safe. Do not ever give in to the fear. Fear will destroy us all. You guys be safe out there. Take care. Celebrate life. And have a good one. Till next time. Joe East. Goodbye.